The Elf on the Shelf, an elf's story in 3D. Now, the daughter of Martin Scorsese is an executive producer, and according to the production company's blog, Martin Scorsese even did a little promo for this Blu-ray release. Though I was unable to find a clip of his television appearance where he did talk about it, it would have been concurrent with him filming Hugo in 2010. This was the early bleeding edge days of 3D Blu-rays, and if I am not mistaken, this was the actual first year 3D Blu-rays were available, which in hindsight is something of a watershed moment in stereo history. Before that, 3D was always a destination activity. You had to go somewhere to see it. Anything at home, with the possible exception of VCDs and 80s-era Japan, were never considered more than a niche novelty. So having a 3D Blu-ray on the shelves in 2010 was just good marketing. And although the animation here is a little stiff by today's standards, it offers an enjoyable stereo experience. Now, unlike the vast majority of 3D cartoons, this is actually rendered in stereo, and they generally let it stretch out into the horizon, so the canvas always looks big. When you're sitting in the family's living room, you can feel the window in an adjacent room behind the family actually has a world outside. The stereo keeps going out into the night sky. And even if that window is hardly seen on screen, the stereo of the snow outside remains very perceivable. That is rare for a 3D cartoon. You almost always have flat mats at some point behind the action, often fairly close. Now, this isn't a complex cartoon, so maybe rendering just wasn't that expensive, or perhaps later producers just decided that returns weren't worth the trouble of a full stereo render. Now, to be clear, this is a 26-minute infomercial on the Elf on the Shelf toy, and it doesn't have any pretension about being what it is. You see Santa's production line sealing up his elves in shrink-wrapped retail packages, which are identical to what you can find at your local Walmart. Myself, I had always wondered what the deal with those elf dolls were, so I found it somewhat enlightening. The trope is really Toy Story. The elves come alive when everyone's in bed, and to that end, I noticed that this family is awfully comfortable going to bed with a full fire raging in the living room. Not so much as a screen, and they hang their stockings right in front of it. This would have made a great fire safety video, with the elf desperately stomping out stray embers and sparks. He could also check for shorts in the tree lights and fly around changing the batteries in the detectors. So much potential there. Now, the songs it has are enjoyable enough, and they don't overstay their welcome. And you do get some nice crowd shots of the dancing elves, which again, it's fully rendered in stereo, so it's a very rich view of it all. And also constant snow falling, which wraps everything up in a fun snow globe. Although there was one area where that kind of worked against the movie. There was a potentially interesting room that has this glass ceiling that showed the snow outside falling. Unfortunately, the way they positioned the cameras, it looked like the walls just end, and they just neglected to render a roof at all. And it feels unfinished, although I thought it was a great idea, but it just didn't work. There's actually a commentary track, which is mostly a series of production kudos and thank yous. It sounded a little corporate at times. However, we do learn that this was produced with 3D in mind from the ground up, and there's a finger-pointing moment. And to emphasize its importance, they made sure nothing before that moment poked out as far. And all in all, it's an enjoyable little novelty from the beginning of home 3D. Though I'm actually not sure how often I'd take it off the shelf.